What I'm going to do today is we're going to learn how our main goal is going to be just learning how important quality keyword rich content is to SEO. The main thing that we're going to emphasize at the end is your content, and that's where Google is ranking you, is based on your content and the keywords that you have in it. Generally, when we start doing, we have presentations on SEO, we generally start with Google Analytics and Search Console and all this kind of stuff that is way ahead of what you need to start thinking about at the beginning. So we're just going to do an introduction here to start out with, and then the other, can be other presentations as we go along if you're interested in that. I read this a long time ago, and it keeps coming out all the time that SEO requires quality content, and it always says that content is the king, and that's the main thing. And I'll have someone give me a website to do, and they'll have pages, and they only have like hardly 100 words on the page, and it just doesn't describe anything. And so then they wonder why they're not ranking Google. The other thing is that SEO is not a black and white process, and my brain is in a financial realm and detail oriented. So I don't deal in gray areas a lot, and SEO tends to be more of a gray area because you don't really know what it takes to get ranked sometimes. So it's not just a this or that kind of thing. So you want to keep that in mind. And it does take time. You'll have someone or even on your website, you'll do some SEO on it. You think, well, next week I'm going to be ranked. Well, that's not the way it works. It does take a lot of time to get Google to recognize you. So I've shared a link here to an article that will give you some information on how long you can expect it to take. And this comes from a very reliable source. It's Site Pro News. It's an article that they shared. And you'll want to look over that if you're wondering why you're not getting ranked right away. And you have to remember that every website and situation is different. I do websites for a wide range of businesses, organizations, and nonprofits. So you got to remember that each one of those is different, and the way that you approach them is going to be different. And the factors you got to consider is, what is your marketing focus? Are you going local only, national, international? Who are your competitors and your competition? Are you selling products as e-commerce or just services? And what is your audience? I do have some websites that don't care anything about SEO because their audience is so limited that they're not looking for everybody to come in to their website and do business with them. I've got one website that's for mortgage bankers. Well, they don't want, you and I would not fit in their organization or their group. So SEO to them is not very important. So these are all things you've got to consider when you're working on SEO, whether it's for yourself or for someone else. The next thing is, how do you get started? What's the first thing you want to do? So tonight we'll focus on reviewing keyword basics and how to create quality content. Those are the two first things you got to do, because you can't start getting into Google Analytics and Search Console and all that kind of stuff until you have your website content and your keywords specified in that content. So we're not going to get into Google Analytics. It's free to use, and it's where you generate your tracking code for Google, and where you view your website traffic results and you develop a marketing strategy, because Google Analytics allows you to target videos, certain pages. You can have your Facebook link tracked and all those kinds of things. So there's a lot that you can do in Google Analytics, but it's really gets involved in more than we've got time for tonight. So we're not going to get into the Search Console, which is also a free Google product or function that you can use. And that's where you submit your site to Google. You monitor and maintain and troubleshoot your site's presence. So you can monitor for broken links. You submit your site map for XML, your robots text, and all that kind of stuff is done through Google Analytics. And from the Search Console. And the Search Console and the Google Analytics all tie together, because when you go into Search Console, you're going to tell it to link to your Google Analytics account. So they're all linked together. But we won't have time to go into all that tonight. So the first step that we want to start working on is your keyword basics. So you want to know what keyword research is. So it's just a method of looking for keywords and phrases to rank a website. So if you've got a website for plumbing, what is it that you want to target? And one thing you've got to keep in mind now, I would have someone contact me that had a plumbing business, whether just a small business or a roofing company. Well, you got to think of all the hundreds and thousands of companies that are doing the same thing. So you've got to somehow focus on what you do that's different from everybody else. Because you can't just rely on keyword of plumbing or real estate or something like that to get you ranked. So you've got to base it on, first of all, on your target audience, figure out who you're targeting. Maybe you're just targeting a smaller niche, maybe just home plumbing, for instance. I have had a client that did security, and he only worked with prisons and government facilities. So those are kind of things that you want to focus on. And SEO and keyword research is never finished. You always have to keep tweaking it. If it's not working now, think of some other way to try to make it work for you. I have, the main thing is how to go about it. How do you figure out these keywords and how they rank on Google? And Google has their keyword tool, but it's tied into their ads, their keyword or their Google ads. And it's hard to just get to their keyword tool now, like it used to be. So there's one here that you may want to, that I would suggest you look into. It's called SEMrush. And it has a lot of different features and ways that you can target keywords. Their main program is a fee-based and it's expensive, but some of these tools are free. So you may want to go through that and you plug in a keyword and it'll give you all these phrases that people have been looking for that may fit with your business. First of all, you want to know what your audience is searching for and what they're interested in. And this tool will return phrases that people have used on Google to search for something that relates to what you do and what you're interested in promoting. So you select a keyword or a key phrase, such as in this instance, just something out of the blue, puppy training. Obviously, you know, you're going to be competing with a lot of people that do puppy training. But what you can do is then do a long tail keyword phrase, which comes out to where you say something like positive puppy training for Labrador Doodles in Amsterdam. So what you're doing is you're taking that puppy training and now you're targeting a particular dog in a particular location. And what you're doing too is you're targeting every web page that you have. It doesn't matter if it's about your products, your services. Maybe your services can be puppy training and breeding or whatever. Every one of those pages will have its own keywords, because what you want to keep in mind is it doesn't matter what page someone may find you on Google search, they're getting to your website, and then they can be there if your content, what I'm trying to say, it's interests them enough, they'll stay on your website and they'll look at other pages as well. That's why every page needs to be optimized for you. Okay. So then we also go into a little bit more on this. So you want to figure out how, well, you want to know how keyword research is done. So you determine your mission, your goals for your website. So all this is pre-planning before you get into actually, expecting your website to be ranked. You determine your keywords and you research them so you know what your audience searches for and are interested in. So you have to have something that's different from your competitors, but you can look at your competitors and see what they're doing to help you determine what you need to do. And then, so that's analyzing your competition. And depending on your business's focus, it could be pretty broad. So I know in the web design business, there are, literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that do the same thing. So it's really hard to rise above some of them. And then you want to prioritize your keyword list as to what you think would be the best and most important ones. Then the next is going to be getting into content and how to create quality content, because just having keywords is not enough. You've got to, what Google expects you to do is write these keywords and phrases in your content so it sounds natural and it's not just you're plugging in a bunch of words, because their algorithms have gotten where they can ferret out anyone trying to game the system, and they'll blacklist you if they find that you're doing, some of this black hat SEO. Nowadays, they're getting a lot better at that. And the meta tag for keywords is not even used anymore, so you don't even need to bother with trying to fill that out on your website for some of your tags. Why is content important? Well, it helps you get your visitors and it keeps them on their site if they're interested in what you're writing about. Lowers your bounce rates, which is the amount of time that they spend on your website. So you don't want someone going to your website and half a second later they're going somewhere else because they didn't find what they wanted and there wasn't anything to engage them in your content. And it results in higher conversions, which is people that actually are engaged in your website. And that comes into return on your investment type of thing, where they're actually buying what you want or soliciting your services to do business with you. And then most importantly, it results in higher rankings in the search engine. And although we talk about Google, you still have other search engines, but everybody still goes to Google most of the time. That's where we spend most of our emphasis. And you want to know if your content is written for your users. So you determine who your audience is and what you want them to know about. And so you write it for them to understand. And if you're in a certain field of business where you use a lot of maybe medical terms or confusing terms and that sort of thing, you need to make sure that that's the only audience that's going to your website, because the normal user may not know what you're even talking about. So you need to determine that. And this is all stuff that you'll determine based on what you're trying to accomplish. And then you want to know what they're interested in, what you're offering that would be something that they would be wanting to take advantage of. So I have gotten to where on my website, I do a lot of maintenance for websites, and there I get a lot of response from Google from my listing with people that just want maintenance, and it brings a lot of business to my company. So that's a niche that I've kind of gotten into. Is your content easy to read? So what you want is good sentence structure. You want a good use of headings to separate that content, because you don't want a paragraph of just nothing but sentences and words. You want to break that up. And another thing that you can do is have some images, photos, and things like that to kind of catch somebody's attention, maybe even videos. So those are other things that could help your website. And that's something that Google recommends, is to have headings. And because your H1 tags and your H2 tags and on down, Google puts more weight on those kinds of things. And that can have be where a lot of your keywords are located. It's in your headings. You want understandable terms. This is what I just mentioned about making sure that whoever you're trying to target knows what you're talking about, or can understand what you're talking about. You need to pay attention to spelling and punctuation. I know that today, especially with all the texting and stuff, people are getting where they can't even spell anymore or write a decent sentence. But on the website, it's still very important. I know for myself, if I see a website that's like that, I won't even consider doing business with them. So it's still very important to pay attention to those things. Okay, then the next thing is a little more on content. And here again, a lot of it sounds like the same thing, but you can look at things a little bit differently with each of these bullet points. What is your user search goals? What are they looking for? And you'll notice when you Google for something, you can type in questions and Google knows immediately what you're looking for. So what kind of questions would somebody be asking that would relate to what you're offering, what your company provides? So think about that. Are you trustworthy? And I try to let my clients know, if I'm saying, are you trustworthy, or can someone trust you? That doesn't mean that you're criminal-like. It just means, do you actually know your products and services? Can I rely on you? Are you going to be reliable to providing what you're saying you're going to provide? And another thing nowadays is if your website is secured with the SSL, which is Secure Socket Layer. And Google came out a few years ago and they started saying that all websites have to be secured. And it was still interpreted to think, do I have to have an e-commerce site? Well, they're getting to where they're flagging a lot of websites that are not secured. And so when I get a new client, that's one of the requirements. I just go ahead and make sure it's secured. I don't even ask them. It's just something I tell them they have to pay for. So that's still very important. And then, is your content up to date? Because if you have content that is out of date, you know, what are you really telling your client? You're telling them that your business isn't that important and you don't ever check your website. So you want to keep it fresh and up to date, because what Google's doing is it's sending its robots out to check your website. And if it gets to where it's the same thing over and over, your content, your website rankings are going to drop. And I know that it's kind of hard on a website because, like I tell my clients, is technically, you know, you do what you do and there's not a whole lot you can change. But maybe if there is something you could change, or have a Facebook page where you're adding things. Google does search the Facebook pages. And what I do with my clients, if I'm putting something on the Facebook page, I always make sure that I give them a link back to their website so that their website is getting traffic. It kind of goes hand in hand. Or you can do a blog or, you know, anything like that, just to get some kind of activity to your website address. And then all this, the up-to-date content is so important to Google for that reason, because they'll stop, I mean, they don't stop scanning your website, but they won't find fresh content. And that's one of the main things that they look for ranking. And then the next thing I have is some links that you'll want to look at. These are all links that I used, or at least the first few, are links that I used to, oh, I didn't switch pages here for you. Okay. All right. There are links that I used for the topics that I talked to you about. And what I did is I just summarized some of the information. So I have the keyword research tool that I mentioned earlier. And here we go. I think about 3 of these articles came from a website called yoast.com. And I know that most of you don't have anything to do with WordPress, but I do use it for some clients. And a client that I just picked up yesterday needs maintenance done on their site, and it's a WordPress site. So it does help with my business. It gives me more clients. But Yoast is the #1 SEO tool for WordPress. And I'm not giving you this to sell you on WordPress. What I'm doing is giving it to you because it's an excellent article that goes into very detailed information on keyword research, just on that topic. The next one is SEO copywriting. And then on quality content and how do you create it. And they have links to many other articles, and they're very long articles. They go into great detail about all this, these topics. So I would suggest, if you're interested in getting into the SEO for your website, that you go ahead and look into these articles I've shared with you. And then if you want to learn about Google Analytics, Google has a free course called Analytics for Beginners. It'll take you through step by step what Google Analytics does and what it's, how to use it. And then also the Google Search Console. Those are all good tools to become familiar with. That's all I have for this presentation.